Most people think preparation looks like promotion. It doesn't. Preparation almost always looks like loss first, and that's exactly why most people miss it. Here's what nobody tells you. God doesn't prepare you by adding things to your life. He prepares you by removing the things you are leaning on, so you learn to lean on Him instead. And if you don't understand that, you will misread every single sign I'm about to show you as a setback when it's actually a setup. By the end of this video, you're going to look back at the last few months of your life completely differently. So if you're ready to see what's really happening behind the scenes, write "I see it now" in the comments. Let's begin. Sign number 1. Your comfort has been quietly stripped away. Not dramatically, not all at once, just piece by piece. The job that used to feel stable feels shaky. The routine that used to feel safe feels restless. Nothing catastrophic has happened, but the ground doesn't feel solid anymore. Here's the insight almost nobody talks about. God never builds something new on top of something you're still comfortable in. Comfort and calling cannot occupy the same space. If you were still fully at peace where you are, you'd have no reason to reach for what's next. Think about Moses. He wasn't called at the palace, surrounded by comfort. He was called in the wilderness, tending someone else's sheep, 40 years removed from everything he used to be. The discomfort wasn't God punishing him for killing the Egyptian. The discomfort was the soil his calling needed to grow in. Comfort would have kept him a prince. Discomfort made him a deliverer. So if your life feels less stable than it used to, that's not proof God forgot you. It's proof He's loosening your grip on a life that was never big enough for what's coming. Sign number 2. You're bored by things that used to fulfill you completely. This one confuses people the most because it doesn't feel spiritual, it just feels like discontent. You hit a goal you used to dream about, and instead of satisfaction, you feel flat. You reach a level of stability you once prayed for, and it doesn't move you the way you thought it would. Here's what almost nobody realizes: that restlessness isn't ingratitude. It's capacity outgrowing container. God doesn't give you dissatisfaction to make you miserable. He gives it to you as evidence that there's more available than what you've settled for. Look at David. He was already a king when he wrote some of his most desperate psalms, not before his promotion, but after it. Kingship didn't satisfy the ache in him, because the ache was never about the throne. It was pointing him towards something deeper than a title. If achieving your current goals hasn't filled the space you thought it would, stop trying to explain it away. That emptiness has a direction. Follow it instead of numbing it. Sign number 3. People start opposing you before you've done anything to deserve it. This is the sign that breaks people's hearts because it feels so unfair. You haven't changed, you haven't done anything wrong, but suddenly there's tension where there wasn't any before, a coldness from people, unexplained criticism, doors that used to open now hesitating. Here's the part nobody explains correctly. Opposition doesn't respond to what you've done, it responds to what you carry. People can sense weight before they can see the source of it. You don't have to have arrived anywhere for someone to feel threatened by where you're headed. Joseph's brothers didn't hate him because of anything he'd accomplished. He was 17. He hadn't built anything, ruled anything, saved anyone yet. They hated him for a dream, for a potential they could feel but couldn't explain. If people are reacting to you strangely and you can't point to a reason, stop looking for what you did wrong. Some resistance isn't a response to your past, it's a reaction to your future. If this is describing someone in your life right now, comment "I understand," because the next 4 signs go even deeper. Sign number 4. You stop needing to defend yourself. This one is quiet, and it sneaks up on you. There was a time you needed to correct every misunderstanding, prove every point, win every argument about your character. And then one day, you notice you just don't need to anymore. Someone misjudges you, and instead of reacting, you feel this strange stillness. Here's the insight nobody says out loud. That's not you getting passive. That's you outgrowing the need for other people's approval to validate your identity. And that shift, that exact shift, is one of the most reliable markers that God is about to trust you with something bigger. Because bigger assignments always come with bigger misunderstanding. Nehemiah was in the middle of rebuilding a wall, a genuinely massive undertaking, when his enemies kept inviting him down to talk. Over and over, and his answer stayed the same every time: I am doing a great work so that I cannot come down. He didn't waste his energy defending himself to people who were never going to understand him anyway. If you've stopped feeling the urge to explain yourself to everyone, that's not coldness. That's the emotional architecture bigger callings require. Sign number 5. Your prayers start getting smaller and quieter, not bigger and louder. You'd think growing closer to something bigger would mean bigger, more dramatic prayers. Actually, it's usually the opposite. The desperate, wordy, anxious prayers start to fade, and in their place comes something shorter, simpler, almost wordless at times. Nobody tells you this, but that shift isn't spiritual decline, it's spiritual maturity. Loud prayer often comes from trying to convince God. Quiet prayer comes from trusting Him. The volume goes down exactly when the trust goes up. Elijah found God not in the earthquake, not in the fire, not in the wind, but in what Scripture calls a still, small voice. The dramatic stuff wasn't where the presence was, it was in the quiet after all the noise had passed. If your prayers have gotten quieter lately, don't panic that your faith is fading. Ask instead whether it's finally settling. Sign number 6. Doors are closing faster than they're opening. This one feels the most like failure, because closed doors look like rejection. Opportunities that should have worked out fall apart. Conversations that should have led somewhere go nowhere, and it feels like everything is shutting down at once. Here's what almost nobody says about this. God closes doors faster right before a major assignment, not slower, because a bigger calling requires a narrower path. The more doors that stay open, the more diluted your direction becomes. Closing doors isn't scarcity, it's precision. Paul planned to go into Bithynia. Scripture says plainly that the Spirit did not allow it. Not because Bithynia was bad, but because Macedonia was the assignment, and God wasn't going to let a good option distract Paul from the specific one. If multiple doors have shut on you recently, stop counting the closed ones. Start watching for the one that's about to open, because it's usually the only one left standing for a reason. Sign number 7. You feel compassion for the very people who hurt you. This is the deepest sign, and the one that catches people completely off guard. You expect anger to fade into indifference. Instead, something stranger happens. You find yourself actually caring about the well-being of someone who wronged you, not because you're pretending, because something in you has genuinely shifted. Here's the insight almost nobody connects to preparation. Character always arrives before the assignment that requires it. If God is preparing you to carry weight, lead people, or influence a room, He first has to make sure your heart can hold power without turning bitter. Compassion for people who hurt you isn't weakness. It's proof your heart has been tested and it passed. Joseph, standing in front of the very brothers who sold him into slavery, holding more power over them than he'd ever had in his life, didn't use that power for revenge. He wept. He forgave. He told them what they meant for evil, God meant for good. That capacity to forgive from a position of power, not weakness, is exactly what made him trustworthy to run a nation. If you feel unexplainable compassion for someone who hurt you deeply, that's not you being naive. That's evidence you've become someone bigger things can safely be placed into. Here's what ties all 7 of these together. None of these signs look like blessing on the surface. Stripped comfort, restless dissatisfaction, unfair opposition, quiet defenselessness, smaller prayers, closing doors, compassion you didn't choose to feel. Every single one of them looks, at first glance, like something going wrong. But preparation was never going to look like addition. It was always going to look like refinement, and refinement always feels like loss before it feels like readiness. So if you've been walking through several of these at once, wondering why your life feels harder right when you thought it should feel easier, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not falling behind. You are being formed. If even one of these 7 signs described exactly where you are right now, Write "I'm being prepared" in the comments below, and if you know someone walking through a season that doesn't make sense to them yet, send them this video. It might be the thing that helps them recognize what's actually happening to them before they give up on it. Subscribe to stay in this with us, because the next thing God is building in you deserves to be understood, not just survived. Until next time.